Okay, so we understand what is the problem with having 4 areas interested in generating their own forecast. So what has history done? What have companies done about this? Basically, you've heard it a lot. We're talking about here the S&OP process, the sales and operation process. Right? So why is this process important? So what is it basically about? It's basically about a different sets of things. Again, I'm going to try to simplify. Basically, about the problem that we just discussed, it's getting these areas together into a single place and making sure that the number that comes out from there is a single number for the entire company. Basically, the S&OP slogan is a single number. And there's different ways to do this, but the simplest one is having meetings where you actually generate the forecast with these 4 areas together to make sure that everyone agrees on the plan that's coming from this process. The second thing with the S&OP process is not just about getting a single number, but there's also additional benefits of getting these areas together. Sales generates a forecast by themselves. It's very difficult because they need information from other areas, and by bringing them together you can have a forecast that fits on information from multiple areas, which is basically required because all of that information has an impact on future demand. So this is the second point, and it's about sharing information. The S&OP process typically runs at a monthly level, and it's a kind of a second layer of planning. Basically, in your first layer you have your annual budget that you can review 2, 3, 4 times a year. And now comes the objective of the S&OP process, which is basically getting that budget that you developed, which is basically your target, and trying to look at what has happened throughout the year up to now. And it's kind of being honest about your forecast. And the idea of the S&OP process, and this is the most important but at the same time the most difficult thing to implement, is to make gaps visible. It's not about hiding gaps. It's about actually the other way around. It's making gaps visible so that you can understand that there's an action required to be done, or that there's basically a problem, but not a problem in a bad way, a problem in the actual way of a problem definition, which is basically a gap. So those 3 things are very important about the S&OP process, and know that you're covering here what you have in the short term and mid term, basically in the S&OP process. Different companies run in a different way. Again, typically it's a monthly process. You do monthly forecasts, and some companies have a 6-month horizon, some companies have a 12-month horizon, some others have a 24-month horizon. But the main focus is in the following months, not necessarily that month number 24. So that's basically the S&OP process, and now we're going to talk about the solution, about a technology that supports the S&OP process, which in your case we're talking about APO. So why do you have APO? Well, you have 2 reasons in here. One is adding technology to the process and making the process easier to be handled, easier with easier maintenance, and which is basically going from multiple Excel files and manual manipulation into a single platform. And the second one, it's about adding statistics and mathematics and objectivity to your demand forecasting process. Another important point about here is that with the S&OP process, or with the forecasting process, a new role comes into place, which is the demand planner, which is basically, or should be basically, a neutral role within these 4 different areas, because again you need to look for objectivity. So now we're going to look at the evolution of the different companies, the evolution within the demand forecasting. So basically how companies evolve from not doing anything to what we call forecasting excellence.